Alright, yo guys, I just want to explain why some card sets on certain characters are outdated and why you should never use them and upgrade your card sets ASAP. So, with the new release of all the new card sets that have come out in these past few updates, a lot of characters have gone card sets that just are much better than their defaults. The game will tell you these card sets are recommended, but the game doesn't know what it's talking about, and they will give you much lower scores on everything between Trials, Gates of Nightmare, and honestly just make Astrolab, Velvet Trials, and Palaces just harder than they need to be. For example, I'm going to show you some characters and what you need to change. Alright, the first one I'm going to show is Joker. So we have Joker here, and a lot of people use his default card set. And his default card set is not bad, but it is very mid, especially in nowadays meta and how much damage other DPS and AoEs are actually doing. He's been power crept a lot, and if you want to kind of mitigate how much he's been power crept and you're a huge Joker fan, then do what I'm exactly going to do here. Alright, so first of all, we have Hindrance and Departure. Increase curse damage by 10%, which is alright. Increase curse damage to foes with debuffs by 20%, which is it's honestly useless if you're not using somebody like Yao Ling or somebody like Howler. If you're not using a Howler or Yao Ling and you're using a healer and a buffer, then this card set is completely useless for you. The 4 set does nothing for you. Now we're going to get into his bonus. After defeating a foe, increase user attack by 30%. That might sound great, but you realize you have to defeat a foe every 3 turns, and some of these foes have extreme HP, so you're not doing that. And also, some foes aren't defeatable. Trials of Nightmare, none of the foes can be killed, and some Trials of Seed, some enemies can't be killed and are just infinite HP, so at the end of the day, it's still worthless. Even some of the modes that are made for this card set, it is still underperforming. So I'm going to show you what card set you should switch it to. Alright, so right here, this is the card set you should be using for Joker. It is Prudence and Resolve. Prudence and Resolve is much better for him in every single right and reason. I'll show you why. Alright, so if you read the bonuses here, they're instantly way better. 2 set effect, decrease speed by 3, but increase attack by 18, which is extremely good because if you're using him and you want him to always be in the 4 slot, sometimes you have speeds on some of your cards, and this will just make that lower, so you don't have to worry about having extra speed on him, and also you never need speed on a DPS character, you always need them on the last slot. And increase attack by 18%, which is an extremely good, it's almost 20% increased attack buff just for a 2 set. Alright, next we have increased damage by 16%, which is also an amazing perk that you'd also really want. It doesn't really matter if you're getting a 10, 20, or 10% curse buff when you're doing increased 16% damage and an 18% attack, which is overall just way better for him in every single right. And this is what's really good for him. Resolve and Prudence. At the start of the battle, if the user is in the 3rd or 4th ally slot in the turn order, increase attack by 24 by 30%. So basically just look at this number here, the 30%. If you're always 4th slot, which almost always you will be, you're getting a 30% attack buff with 18% attack. You're getting a 48% attack buff just from these 2 buffs, and then on top of that you're getting a bonus 16 damage multiplier. So you could think of this 16 damage multiplier as something like this. Just think of it like a bonus damage multi-card here. It's just infinitely better. If you're using Joker and you switch this card set, this will make him so he won't be as power crept, and he will actually be semi-relevant in the meta and actually really good. And if you want to use this card set on any AoE DPS, I recommend it, but most AoE DPS have their own dedicated card sets that are already better for them. But characters like Joker that don't have one that is really good, then you always want to put this on them. For example, if you have somebody like, you want to use this on Justice and Caroline and use them as an AoE sweeper, that works very well. So if you want to use that on Justin and Caroline, go for it. Just make sure you have no speed on them and make sure they're 4 slot, and this will make them busted on AoE. That's just one of the characters you can use this on to optimize them the most. Alright, next character we're going to be talking about is one of my personal favorites of all time. We have Mesa. He's honestly my 2nd favorite character in this game, but he's a huge victim of power creep. He's very middling in terms of stats, and there's some bosses that Ryuji even does better than him on, which is really saddening because he's a really well-designed character and has one of the coolest animations in the game. But there's a card set that almost fixes him and will make him 10 times better, and I'll show you that. So right now I have his default on him, Oppression and Wisdom. It's alright. It's not as bad as Joker's default set, but it also isn't the best. Increase physical damage by 10%. That doesn't really matter because you don't really care about your physical damage or your physical damage stacks until your last turn. And if you're not even using your last turn, you're just staying in Doctor mode and you're just inflicting bleeds, then at the end of the day, this physical damage means absolutely nothing to you. Next is, when dealing damage with an attack, gain Malice. Malice increase attacks by 5% for 2 turns, stacks up to 6 times. This can be really good, but it takes a long time to get going, and what you want with a character that does damage is for them to get going faster. You don't want to stack something 6 times just to get a 45% damage buff, if I'm correct. That is just like extreme amount of time you're waiting just to get a 30% damage buff. Excuse me, it wasn't 45, it was 30. But to wait all these turns and stack up 6 times just to get a 30% damage buff, it's just not the best. This card set's alright, but I wouldn't use it. When Malice reaches stacks 5 or more, increase physical damage and ailment accuracy by 20%. At the end of the day, like I said, both these stats are completely useless to you if you're using the optimal Mesa team. First of all, you don't need physical damage unless you're in Ripper mode, and most teams don't even want Ripper mode because you just want to inflict bleed. You don't care about his physical damage, and if you do care about his physical damage, 20% is not going to make or break him. And second of all, ailment accuracy by 20%. That is completely useless, and you can throw it out the window, because if you have somebody on your team like Summer Moko with increased ailment accuracy when you buff him with Hail Summer Days, it really does nothing for you. Summer Moko is already helping you hit those caps. You're already going to reach those caps with Summer Moko. You're already going to do a lot of bleed, and you're going to inflict a lot of bleed. And if you're using his dedicated dagger for him, you don't need that anyway. So I recommend using this. So I don't have his space card here because it's very hard to get and it just came out, but I'll show it to you after and what it does. So the 2-set effect, increase attack by 12%, already better than what we had before. 4-set effect, increase damage by 20% for 3 turns. And that's at the start of the battle, so you just get a 20% damage buff just for free. And that's damage. That inflicts on his bleed, his almighty damage, so his bleed gets buffed. So his bleed damage is going crazy. And just remember, this is only the 4th set. I'm not even talking about the space card, which is coming up soon, which is also broken. For 3 turns, you increase your damage by 20%. Amazing. And after activating a highlight, gain the same effect again. And there's never not a time where you're not activating a highlight every 3 turns. Every battle you're in, you're always activating a highlight every 3 turns. No matter what character you're using. You're always using a Horde highlight, a Mesa highlight, any highlight counts for this. Now I'm going to show you the space card and explain what the combination with it does, if that's correct. And if you use Perseverance with his other cards that I just showed you, basically the buff it will give you is increased continuous damage. So that's his bleed. Basically your almighty damage will be already buffed if you're using them with him with twins, and you're putting on, if you're using him with twins and you're using bonus pierce damage, which he always wants, the number 1 stat you want on Mesa is pierce damage, and then you're using Perseverance. So overall, that's like a 40 to 50% increase in continuous damage, aka his bleed, and that's the only thing you want to focus on Mesa. So the other card set would give you maybe 10-20% continuous bleed damage, which is not the best. This will make him extremely good and sometimes even compete with some of the meta characters. I know it sounds crazy because it's Mesa, but if you use this card set on him, it turns him from like a bad character all the way up to a decent or even good character. Because your bleed damage, you'll be surprised. You'll stop hitting like 100,000 damage bleed stacks, and you'll start going up to 300,000 or 200,000 with just bleed alone. And that's not even counting his attacks. So you can honestly hit like 300k per turn with Mesa just using this card set, and that's like a 3 times increase. And these are all new card sets, by the way. So obviously how time works is power creep exists, so all the new card sets are all going to be better than the old card sets most of the time. Talk about as a character that needs it the most for the new card sets. You might look at Yui. Her card sets might be decent on first glance, which they are. Increase electric damage by 10% with a 2-set. Alright, whatever. It's not increased attack, but you know, it's damage, whatever. After allies use electric skills, increase your own attack electric damage. Keep that in mind, it's electric damage, it's not attack. What you want to buff is your attack stats. You don't want to buff your electric damage, because at the end of the day, that's just a damage multiplier. A damage multiplier means nothing if you don't have that much attack invested already. So increase it by 9%, stacks within 9 times. So you're getting roughly around 30% upgrades, which is like kind of pitiful. It's not really doing that much, and it's electric damage, and it's alright. Her full card set is most of the time why people use this. Increase resonance damage, or basically her follow-up attacks. Increase her follow-up attacks critical damage by 50%, which is amazing on paper, but then you realize you're not always hitting crits. Yes, even if you're using Rebellion and using all the buffing crits, and you're getting up to 100%, and yes, you always hitting crits, but at the end of the day, 50% is not a crazy drastic. It doesn't warrant using this card set. It was good back in the day, but at the end of the day, do you want to use this nowadays? No, you don't. You want to use something that's even better and will change her into a much better character. I'm going to show you what that is. This card set will make her honestly 2 times, 3 times more viable in my opinion. It turns this character from being like an F tier character that's like unplayable, then it'll just make her honestly insane. And the card set I'm talking about is this one for Akihiko, but you could use it on Yui, and you can also use it on Motoha. You can always use any of these card sets on characters that are similar to the character discussed. So if you want to use that Joker card set on the twins, go for it. If you want to use that Joker card set on Haru, go for it. It might even be decent on her. But this card set is extremely good for Yui. Increase electric damage by 10%. Alright, that's alright. 4-set, increase attack by 25% for 2 turns after activating critical. Gain the same effect again. You're getting a 25 attack buff for basically doing nothing. You're always hitting critical attacks. It's always proccing every 2 turns, so it's always going to be active. Every turn, you're almost always hitting an attack buff. Because every 2 turns, how Yui's rotation works is you're using her follow-up skill on an ally, so you can always get those follow-ups, and that lasts for 2 turns. So by the time that thing wears off, you're already landing a critical, and this is going for 2 more turns, and then you just keep repeating the cycle. Then you just keep spamming her player 2 ally follow-up attack, and you're basically having a permanent 25%. Just for doing nothing, basically. I know it sounds crazy, but trust me, this strat will work crazy for AoE bosses that require electric damage, and if you don't want to use Akihiko, this is an extreme good alternative to Akihiko. So basically, you want to use somebody like Joker or Motoha, preferably Motoha, but if you don't have a great built Motoha, you can use somebody like Joker, Twins, Sweeper, anybody that's a sweeper. And basically, you just want to spam skill 2 and skill 3, just keep rotating those skills, keep giving your main damage dealer player 2, and then just keep spamming skill 3 or skill 2, and just attack everybody with her multi-attack, and it will give everybody in the field shock, which increases your character's damage overall. And if every character gets shocked, then they're all lower defense, they all take increased crit damage, which is, shock is just amazing. And on top of that, your other damage dealer is getting extreme attack buffs, because they're getting attack buffs from your buffer preferably, and Yui herself. And then you just keep doing that, and she'll just keep doing extreme electric damage. If you just with somebody like Motoha and Joker, and on a Akihiko boss fight, I guarantee you, you can win it. Like, you can honestly get a really high score with just alone. But if you're not really into using the electric damage AoE style of Yui, which makes her more viable because you're not forced to bring her to every single target fight, you can actually bring her to a single target. And if you're not really into using AoE Yui and you want to use it as a single target attack unit, then that's perfectly fine. You could just use Prudence and Resolve right here. You could just do Prudence, decrease speed by 3, which is not a problem because as long as you're faster than your 4th unit and you're using your skill 3 on your 4th unit before they can attack, then that's no problem. And then increase your damage by 60%. And then you can increase your damage even further if you're in the 3rd slot, which you're always going to be at the 3rd slot. You never want Yui in the 4th slot. You always want her in the 3rd slot. You're going to increase your damage by 25%. So I know the 50% resonance damage is really nice, but you got to realize Yui's a sub DPS. She's not the one doing all the score. She's always going to be the one secondarily doing the score. So increasing your critical damage by 50% will give you much lower drop-offs and much lower scores because she's not the main damage dealer. You never want to use Yui as the main damage dealer. She's not like Akechi. Akechi can be used as a solo damage dealer and do all the work himself. She depends on someone. She can't give herself player 2. She can only give everyone else player 2. And even if she does give herself player 2, if I'm mistaken, she can, it really does nothing for you because then you gotta waste a turn buffing yourself. And that is just a wasted turn you can't attack. Akechi can attack on turn 1. So that doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you want to use Prudence and Resolve for single damage. If you're using AoE Yui with Motoha, which you preferably want to use, then you want to use Yui and Motoha and go full AoE. You will get similar scores to Akihiko's with his maxed out 4-star weapon and A0. You won't hit his 5-star weapon damages because his 5-star weapon makes him absolutely beyond broken. Don't get me wrong, you won't out damage a 5-star weapon Akihiko, but you will honestly get the same amount of numbers as an Akihiko that's awareness 0 with a maxed out 4-star weapon. His 5-star weapon just makes the difference, but still, he's not that good. And if you just don't want to pull for him and you still want to do his bosses and get good scores, you might not hit top 5% unless you have a high awareness Motoha and Yui. But if you have a high awareness Yui, you could honestly get top 5%. But if not, if you just want to get top 15% and get a nice badge and you don't want to pull Akihiko, then just go full on damage AoE Yui with, you want to use Cord, Yui, and Motoha. And you will hit extremely good numbers just for having a base unit. Motoha will do you good, you don't need to pull Akihiko. He's nice to have, but he's just a huge sink of gems. We have like 5 characters coming up that are all extremely better than him, so if you pull him, you just wasted 110 pulls or 70 pulls, whatever, unless you got extremely lucky and got him like 10 pulls. And then Motoha, she's free, anybody has her, so you can honestly just do that. Uncommon, unpopular character. He's going to be very relevant in these next coming months because Barry's going to come out and she's going to require a lot of single damage, curse damage for your bosses and Nathan, for your gateways, your Astro Labs. There's going to be a lot of single damage curse bosses, so he's going to be a really good free-to-play unit, or somebody that just doesn't want to pull Barry. He's going to be extremely good as an alternative, and what you want to use is not hindrance and awareness. Awareness and hindrance are nice, but there's much better options like I told you before. The same thing applies to him and Mesa. If you use him with the Sorrow set, with the Perseverance set, basically you're going to increase your continuous damage, and Mesa's whole gimmick is that he does continuous damage over and over, and that's his whole gimmick, so this will be much better for you in the long run than using his hindrance set. Or you can even switch it to something like this. And then Defeat. Increases allies damage dealt to the enemies with debuffs by 18. Increase allies damage dealt to enemies with debuffs by 8%, doesn't stack. So if you're using him with, like, let's just say the Granny, Moda. Let's just say you're using it with somebody like Howler, or the Granny, or somebody like even Crow, Yao Ling, anybody that gives debuffs, it's going to be extremely valuable, and you're going to get 8% damage increase, which is not that bad, but this is just a quick alternative if you don't want to use the other set. The other set's extremely way better, so I would much rather use that. So as you can see here, for Sephia, you want to use Sorrow and Perseverance. Increases your continuous damage by 60%. Same thing as Mesa. It increases bleed damage and increases your overall continuous damage. So since Sephia does a lot of little mini hits over and over and over, this will increase his continuous damage and his curse damage by 60%, which is honestly very good. And honestly, you're getting a 4-set buff, increase your damage by 2 turns. In any world, you're always getting at least 22 or 32% damage, depending on if you're using your highlights. And then on top of that, you're getting a 16% damage buff, just overall stat across the board. So this is definitely a game changer for Sephia and makes him actually viable. If you're a huge Sephia fan, I would highly recommend using this set. It turns him from like a really bad character to something that's like really fun to use. He might not be meta, or like somebody that'll get you extremely high scores, but once in a while I'll even rock a Sephia team just for like a quick fight or some story content, or even on like the train or Astrolab, just because Sephia is a cool design character. He has really cool animations, and this actually makes him way more viable and not just a shit character. It's probably the most obvious one, and most people have already done this before by this point, and I'm just late to it. But if you haven't done this before, I highly recommend you do this, especially at Awareness 1. Alright, before I say anything, this only goes for if you're using Healer or Buffer Twins. If you're using Sweeper or Assassin Twins, this does not work at all. But if you are using Healer or Buffer Twins, absolutely rock this set. Prosperity and Departure. Decreased damage taken by 8%, very good. At the start of battle, fill your own highlight gauge by 25%, extremely good. They have the best highlights in the game, so getting that faster is just infinitely better for rotations, everything in between. Last one. After attacking foe, increase party damage by 8%. When are the twins never attacking? Never. They're never using buffs, they're never using non-attacking skills. Every turn, just think of this as increasing your party damage by 8% every turn. Every turn, you're getting an 8% increased damage buff for basically doing nothing, because they're always attacking. And sometimes this can even proc twice if you're using them with their Almighty and A1. So if you're using A1, you could think of this like sometimes as a 16% damage buff. This with Awareness 1 is extremely broken, because you'll do your first attack, and then Awareness 1 will proc your Almighty attack, and boom, you just gave your whole team 16% bonus damage instead of the normal 8, just because you have Awareness 1. I don't have Awareness 1 on them, but if you have Awareness 1, this set is extremely broken. You're getting 16% damage buffs just every 2 turns, basically. It's actually crazy. And the last character I'm covering is Miyu. The reason I'm covering her is because she's very underused and nobody really uses her, so this is going to be a very niche thing, and I recommend only do this if you have Yusuke. She's only good at Yusuke teams, and she's Yusuke's #1 support, and you want to use her in every Yusuke team. But if you are using her, this is what I would do for her. Make sure you have her built this way. Okay, so you want to be using Faith and Peace every single time, which is her default card set. Not Power and Growth. Some people use Power and Labor. That's if you want to use her on multiple teams, but why are you ever using Miyu on a damaging team? Like, she does absolutely nothing for your team, and her buffs are just kind of abysmal for real attackers besides Yusuke, so just forget about Labor and Integrity, and forget about Power and Growth. They do nothing. You want to use Peace and Faith, so increase your damage by 20%, which is good, very good. So you want to use Peace and Faith. This is the only one you should be using in my opinion. Increase defense by 20%, amazing buff, you need this. Increase shield by 18%, another amazing buff. And the last one, each time a shield is granted, increase the target's defense by 7% for 2 turns, stacks up to 3 times. This is game changing for Yusuke, and I'm going to explain why. If you're using our skill 2 on Yusuke, which is a single target skill by the way, this increases Yusuke's damage by like almost 50%. You're getting like 40 or 34% just for doing a skill. And so what you want to build for her is something that goes along like this. So defense here, obviously you want to focus defense and crit rate and pierce. So what you're looking for in all these cards is everything but attack and damage multiplier. Basically the opposite of what you would look for normally, you go for it. So go for defense, pierce rate, crit multi, crit. Just forget about damage and damage multiplier and attack. Attack and damage multiplier and element accuracy are completely useless on this character, and I would recommend never using it. So go for defense, pierce rate, crit multi, ideally. Next card, you want to have crit rate. This card I have right here is very good. It just has attack on the bottom, which kind of sucks, but if this didn't have attack and had something like crit rate, this would be an amazing card. But either way, it's still really good. you want crit rate, defense, pierce rate. You just want to look for her for crit rate, defense, and pierce rate. Those are your 3 that you're looking for the most, and then multi the last. Crit multi is just something, it's nice, but you don't really need it. And last here is crit multi. I have 1 crit multi card that's 13%. You just need 1 of these with a really high percent, and then you can build the rest of your cards without crit multi. And then you want defense, element accuracy, and damage multiplier are not ideal. You don't really want damage multiplier or element accuracy, but defense and crit multi is good enough for me, so I kept this card. So yeah, you just want to do defense, crit, and then on HP, you just want to do defense, damage multi. If its damage multi is not bad, it just doesn't give you that much stacking, and it does help her a little bit and help your team a little bit but this doesn't really do that much. And then crit multi. So I have defense, crit multi, pretty decent card. The reason this is important is because Yusuke, if you don't know, he's the only character in the game that scales off defense and not attack, and crit rate and damage multiplier aren't that valuable on Yusuke. And if you don't know, Yusuke is the only character in the game that scales off defense, and he doesn't really care for crit multi. He really only cares about defense, crit rate, and pierce. And if you're using him with Miyu, basically Miyu's giving increased defense 24/7 with her skill 2. Her cards are built around defense. She's getting a 20% defense buff with her main card set, and then her secondary effect of giving him almost 34% or 38% increased defense is just increasing his defense cap by even further. So if you're using Yusuke and using him in a Yusuke team, you want to use that every single time. I highly recommend you guys change all your guys' card sets on every single character in this video. It will do nothing but bring you higher scores, make the characters more enjoyable to use, increase your damage by almost 2 to 3 times. And honestly, I don't see anybody on the internet talking about this, or even anybody bringing it up. All the major YouTube channels are just talking about basic things like if you should skip this 2 minutes or do this. I just want to make a video that's actually helpful for the community and very informative. I don't see anyone talking about this. I feel like I'm crazy because I'm not the one who figured it out, because I know other people out there have figured this out also, but nobody's talking about it. So I just want to make this general knowledge so everybody knows what to change and what to do. I recommend you doing that ASAP, especially for Joker and Yui. If you are looking into using Joker or Yui, then I highly recommend you change those like as soon as you can. I would just build them with all your materials as soon as you have the chance. If you're a huge Joker and Yui fan, those card sets honestly make them not even bad characters or power crept characters anymore. So yeah, those are my ending thoughts. I appreciate everyone's recent positivity on my most recent videos and all the views and likes and comments and everything. It really encourages me to keep going with this channel and making more P5X content. And I just feel like I want to be one of those P5X content creators that think outside the box and don't just make the content everyone else is making. I don't just want to make before you buy or should you pull this character or new content is dropping. Like, yes, I'll still do those videos, but I want to do videos like these that are actually really informative and helpful that nobody else is doing. So I really appreciate everyone, and I hope you guys all stay safe. Peace out. Subscribe if you liked the video. Like the video if you liked it. Don't like it if you don't like it. I just want to see the comments. Do you guys agree with what I said? Do you think all the things I said about the card sets and how much they make differences are valuable? Because in my personal opinion, I feel like the card sets I've shown you guys make some of these characters even 2 to 3 times better. And I just want to make sure everybody knows these, because I feel like it's an uncommon fact nobody's talking about. So yeah, I appreciate everyone. Hope you guys have a great day. Peace.